There are at least 12 documented versions of Jesus, each with a different purpose, each constructed by human hands with very real agendas. Jesus isn't a linear character. He was constructed in layers, like a building erected by architects who never met. First layer, the historical man. What we can prove with archaeology, Roman documents, and Jewish sources. Born between 6 and 4 BC, lived under military occupation, executed as a political insurgent. No miracles, just a body and a cross. Second layer, the theological Christ. What the Gospel writers, Paul and the Church Fathers constructed. Here enter the promises, the titles, the dogmas, Messiah, Son of God, eternal Logos. Each author had an agenda. Each Gospel painted a different face. Third layer, the political Jesus. What emperors, popes, and reformers did with him. Constantine transformed a crucified man into an imperial symbol. Luther made him German. Colonial Europe made him white. This part has been forgotten by many. There's a deep reason it was said this way. Descend to the ground of Galilee. The carpenter nobody photographed. Historical Jesus. What almost nobody notices is that the historical Jesus left nothing written, no letters. What do we have? Flavius Josephus, Jewish historian, mentions Yeshua bar Yosef in Antiquities of the Jews, one line. Tacitus, Roman historian, confirms the execution of Christus under Pontius Pilate, another line. Few people know that Jesus' entire life fits in less than 2 paragraphs outside the Bible. Archaeology? Nazareth was a village of maybe 400 people. No monumental synagogue, no Roman marketplace. There's a detail hidden in Luke 4:16, where he had been brought up. Nazareth wasn't a birthplace of prophets. It was forgotten even by maps. Jesus spoke Aramaic, not Greek. He worked wood, didn't preach to daily crowds. He lived under Herod Antipas, who beheaded John the Baptist for less. The true message is in the subtext. Being king of the Jews in occupied territory wasn't a spiritual title. It was a death sentence. And then, something extraordinary happened. After the crucifixion, his followers didn't flee. They rewrote everything. Jesus of the Synoptic Gospels. Mark writes first, around 70 AD, and his Jesus runs. Immediately appears 41 times. Jesus expels demons, heals lepers, flees from crowds. What seemed like the end was the beginning. Mark ends with women fleeing the empty tomb because they were afraid. No post-resurrection appearance, no happy ending. Matthew copies 90% of Mark, but adds genealogy, magi, Sermon on the Mount. His Jesus is the new Moses. Born under massacre of innocents, echo of Exodus, teaches on mountain, like Sinai, fulfills Jewish prophecies line by line. Matthew writes for Jews who need proof. Luke copies Mark, adds exclusive parables, Good Samaritan, Prodigal Son, and makes Jesus universal. Born in Bethlehem by Roman census, historians doubt it. Genealogy goes back to Adam, not just Abraham. Luke writes for Gentiles. His Jesus embraces prostitutes, Samaritans, Roman soldiers. This message was simple but powerful. Salvation has no ethnic border. 3 authors, 3 agendas, 3 Jesuses, urgent Mark, fulfilling Matthew, inclusive Luke. There's something in this text that most people ignore. They never worried about harmonizing. Contradictions? They were irrelevant. The message mattered more than chronology. Jesus of John. John ignores 90% of the synoptics. No parables, no exorcisms, no birth. He begins before creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is the Logos Jesus. Not a carpenter, architect of the cosmos. Doesn't start in Bethlehem, starts in eternity. John 8:58. Before Abraham was, I am. A phrase that almost got him stoned for blasphemy. Few people know that I am ego eimi, is God's name in Exodus 3:14, John isn't making poetry. He's doing high-risk theology. His Jesus speaks in code. I am the bread of life. I am the door. I am the vine. 7 I am declarations, each one a theological bomb. You've never heard this explanation. John wrote around 90 to 100 AD, when Christianity was already separating from Judaism. He needed a Jesus who was more than a Messiah. He needed God incarnate. While many believe that the four Gospels tell the same story, John rewrites the rules. His Jesus doesn't agonize in Gethsemane, he controls his own arrest, doesn't cry out on the cross, declares, "It is finished," and gives up his spirit. This changes everything. Jesus of Paul. Paul never met Jesus alive, never heard the Sermon on the Mount, never saw the multiplication of loaves. And us? Paul saw a light on the road to Damascus and rewrote Christianity. His letters, 50-60 AD, are older than the Gospels. Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, written before Mark. What almost nobody notices is that the Christian theology you know comes more from Paul than from Jesus. Grace versus law, faith versus works, justification, redemption, cosmic Christ, second Adam, mystery revealed to Gentiles. Paul does something radical. He unlinks Jesus from Judaism. Circumcision, optional, Sabbath, irrelevant, dietary laws, abolished. Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. All are one in Christ Jesus. From this moment, everything makes sense. Christianity becomes a global religion because Paul removed the ethnic barriers. But the truth is that Paul also plants dangerous seeds. Romans 13, every authority comes from God. Resist, and you'll be condemned. On the outside, it seemed like faith. On the inside, there was control. Emperors loved that phrase. And then, something extraordinary happened. Constantine read Paul and transformed the cross into an imperial sword. Jesus of the Councils. Nicaea, 325 AD. Constantine gathers 318 bishops. The question, is Jesus God or creature? Arius, presbyter of Alexandria, says, there was a time when the Son did not exist. Athanasius responds, the Son is co-eternal with the Father. This phrase carries a powerful spiritual code. Define this wrong, by heresy, backwards death. Arius loses. The Nicene Creed is born. Jesus is of the same substance, homoousios, as the Father. Few people know that Constantine, who presided over the council, was only baptized on his deathbed by an Arian bishop. Irony or strategy? Chalcedon, 451 AD. New dispute. Does Jesus have one nature or two? One will or two? Eutyches says, only divine nature, the human was absorbed. Nestorius. Two separate persons, one human, one divine. Chalcedon decides, two natures, one person. Whoever disagrees becomes a heretic. There's a detail hidden in each council. Theology was geopolitics. Rome versus Constantinople. Alexandria versus Antioch. Not everyone was ready for this message. Whoever controlled the definition of Christ controlled the empire. The true meaning is surprising. Dogma wasn't born from revelation. It was born from votes and blood. Descend to the catacombs basement. The versions that lost still whisper in the shadows. Jesus of the heresies. Hidden truths live where orthodoxy doesn't look. The Gnostics had a different Jesus. Gospel of Thomas, found in 1945. Jesus says, the kingdom is within you and around you, not in temples of wood and stone. No cross, no physical resurrection, only secret knowledge, gnosis, that frees the soul. Marcion, 144 AD, had two gods, the cruel God of the Old Testament and the loving God of Jesus. He rejected all Judaism. The church excommunicated him, but he almost won. This part has been forgotten by many. For decades, there were more Marcionite churches than Catholic ones. The adoptionists said Jesus was born human, became divine at baptism. The Docetists, Jesus only seemed human. He was pure spirit. The Ebionites, Jesus was a Jewish prophet, nothing more. Paul was the true heretic. Why doesn't anyone talk about this? Because the winners burned the manuscripts. Tertullian, 3rd century theologian, admitted, "Truth doesn't matter. What matters is what the Church declares true." This can change the way you see your faith. Heresy is proof that Jesus was never monolithic. He was disputed, rewritten, molded. Ascend to the imperial throne. Jesus becomes a tool of conquest. And the cross? Plants flags. Political Jesus. King of the Jews. These 3 words killed Jesus. Not blasphemy. Politics. Rome executed insurgents, not theologians. Pilate didn't ask, "Are you God?" He asked, "Are you a king?" The triumphal entry into Jerusalem? Military provocation? Zechariah 9:9 prophesied the Messiah entering riding a donkey, symbol of peaceful king. But Jesus did this during Passover, with Jerusalem full of pilgrims and Roman troops on maximum alert. How many times have you felt this? The tension of challenging absolute power, knowing the price. The cleansing of the temple? Economic attack. Jesus overturned money changers' tables, interrupted the system that enriched Caiaphas and Roman collaborators. Mark 11:17. My house will be a house of prayer. You've turned it into a den of thieves. This didn't happen by chance. There's a purpose. It was rebellion disguised as religious reform. The truth is that Jesus died between 2 lestai, Greek term for bandits or insurgents. Barabbas, released in Jesus' place, likely a zealot. The cross wasn't an altar, it was a public gallows for political terrorists, and in that instant, faith became alive. Resurrection transforms execution into victory. Rome killed the body, but lost the narrative. Cross the ocean and change color. White Jesus, black Jesus, Asian Jesus. Mirror of the conqueror. Jesus in culture. Interlude. There's something in this text that most people ignore. Jesus of Nazareth was a 1st century Palestinian. Brown skin, short curly hair, 5'5", tall, calloused hands. You've never heard this explanation. The white, blonde, blue-eyed Jesus was a European invention of the Renaissance. Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, was the model for Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. Yes, the Jesus you know has the face of a 15th century Italian nobleman. Europe colonized the world and exported this Christ. But Africa paints Jesus black. Ethiopia has had icons of Christ with dark skin since the 4th century. Latin America makes Jesus mestizo. Asia makes Jesus with Oriental features. What if this story is, in fact, about you? Each culture molds Jesus in its image because faith needs a mirror.
See in the next video.